Except it gets so darn hot in here.
It's just the last night of dress rehearsal.
Oh, okay.
That's the first show, 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Tickets are only $10 a piece, but they're not tax deductible.
That isn't included in our taxes?
No, that's extracurricular. All right.
Now, the Sunday matinee may be free for seniors.
All right, I'd like to call
There's
the
a
meeting
method to the
to order.
madness.
It is November 20th, 2014. This is the Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. And if we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our next agenda item is public input, which I do not see that we necessarily have anybody public. Moving on to review and addition to the agenda, we are going to move the school business up ahead of town business so that we can do, we have a budget review, but also what we're going to do is we've been trying to schedule tours. When we did the town budget, we did tours of the town facilities. We've been trying to schedule tours of the school district. So what we're going to do tonight is take a short break. Once we get past our correspondence, we're going to take a short break. Budget committee is going to do a quick tour of the Campbell High School facilities, and then we'll be back after that break there. So that is going to be our change the agenda tonight. Moving on.
I have a couple of additions,
Okay.
if you don't mind. Before we're through, I'd like to talk about the dates for the hearings and what have you, because I'm sure we can set some of those now. And the second thing, I would like to just talk briefly about the solid waste budget, because I wasn't here when it was talked about, and I have some questions about the disposal costs and what have you.
Okay. All right.
Is Jason going to be here?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Then you'll be.
Moving on, then we have two sets of minutes. We have November 6th minutes and November 13th minutes. We'll take them one at a time. Are there any changes, corrections, anything to the November 6th minutes?
Yeah, on page 11, somewhere on line 7, me speaking, it says, "He indicated if you look at the recent government elections and results, they showed that Litchfield is right of center. He noticed that the people overwhelmingly voted, even though we lost at the state level." I don't remember my exact words, but I know what I said was he noted that the people of Litchfield overwhelmingly voted Republican, even though we lost at the state level. So I guess we just got to add a couple words in there.
Okay, so
Because
that
it seems like an
was-
incomplete sentence right now.
Was on page, what was that?
Page 11,
Oh, page
line
11.
7. Says, he noted that the people, we got to add, of Litchfield,
Alrighty,
overwhelmingly voted Republican.
alrighty.
So, of Litchfield and Republican, and other than that, I'm good with everything else.
Okay, we'll make sure those changes,
Sure.
yep.
Now, since the secretary isn't here,
Mhm.
it would be better to wait until next meeting on these.
What usually happens is she takes the DVD and she transcribes them into the minutes, so.
That's good with you, fine.
So I think we'll be all set. Any other changes or corrections to the November 6th minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
Or one abstention. Next are the November 13th minutes. Are there any changes or corrections to those?
I've got a couple.
All right.
On page 3, line 20, when we were talking about replacing existing vehicle, and Chief O'Brien indicated we are replacing the Crown Victoria, so the new vehicle would have to be outfitted. And I believe that he was corrected on that the plans was to replace one of the SUVs that we bought, and that we could possibly use some of that equipment from being retrofitted. Is that correct, Brian? You recall that?
that some of the equipment from the existing SUV can be transferred to the, I'll call it, new SUV. Yes.
Alrighty.
The Crown Vic material is
Obsolete.
end of its shelf life.
Right. Okay.
And on page 5, let me find this. I'd like to add, if you go down to line 41, 42, Ms. Varick indicated she used $3.14 per gallon quoted by Dead River. And then I believe Mr. Bork stated that the contract of the school for this coming year was $3.05. And that they'll be using the same price. You're looking at me.
Well, I don't recall the exact price, but
305 is what I wrote down, so.
Yeah. that's all right.
Okay.
I don't recall the exact price, but I'll put it up if I haven't looked at it. It's somewhere around 305, 306.
Yeah, that was what you stated,
Okay, so Mr. Bork indicated the school
contract for
contract.
next year. It's $3.05 per gallon.
Alrighty.
Current year. We don't have a contract for next year. It's current year.
Okay,
My understanding was the same, that it was for this year.
Yeah, 14, 15.
but she used
I don't mean to correct, but it's.
She had a different number, I don't know
Yeah,
what it was.
different number, and I'm just trying to get the right number.
Yeah, we wouldn't have a contract for next year.
Yeah.
Alright, so the current contract was 305. Okay.
And that basically might change it.
Okay. Anything else? I had one on page 8.
I almost did that one too, Cindy.
Mr. Spencer clarified that the committee voted that the stipend did not belong in the budget. That is all correct, and I did listen to see what exactly was said afterwards. I then commented that the committee agreed that $12,000 reduction is appropriate, but that people had a variety of reasons why. So just want to, yeah.
I had said you disagreed with it, but I.
Yep. All right, anything else? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Made.
Been made, is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so the 13th are approved. Correspondence. We did have correspondence. We had we have a copy tonight, and I did forward it to you, the district fiscal year 2014. We had, let's see, we had the superintendent's goals and objectives that I forwarded. We had a correspondence from a community member, Tyler Matthews, who had some questions about the school district's budget and the calculation of some of the health care, so I did forward that, so that when we get to that part of the budget, they will be ready to address whatever those questions are. And let's see. I think that's all we had for correspondence.
Should have a message in your inbox on town valuation.
Yes, you're right, thank you. Town valuation, which is an agenda item tonight, so we will be referring to that. All right, so that is it for correspondence. So at this point, what we're going to do now is take a short recess, for about a half an hour while we do a tour with the school district and take a look at the facilities at Campbell High School. So we will be back approximately half an hour. I can't give it an exact because it's going to vary depending on what it is. We will refrain, though, from discussion. If you have questions that you want to ask about what you see, great, but we'll refrain from discussion until we get back to the table. All right? Okay, we are in recess then.
I'm sorry.
play reruns of Gilligan's Island when we're gone, right?
I don't know. I should just bring this one. I don't know who has access to this one.
Never
You don't
do
jinx
that.
yourself like that. I don't know if we're gonna need to shut that door maybe. All right, welcome. We are back from our tour. That was about 40 minutes. We got to see some of the highlights of the Cambridge High School building. And again, I know only Dan and I were able to make it yesterday. We looked at GMS, we looked at LMS. I know for myself, it's been a lot of years since I've been in those buildings. I saw a lot of things that I think are important. So I would just encourage you, if you have an opportunity and you want to go through it, to talk to the superintendent's office, and maybe they can have the principals or whatever take you on a little tour or whatever. But I think it's very eye-opening, for me anyways, having been in the past very familiar with those buildings. It was a surprise to me, some of the things that I saw. So, getting back then on our agenda, I'm going to have the next part is the budget review, the executive summary, and the superintendent's strategic plan, which we all were forwarded a copy of. And then I'll just turn it over to Superintendent Hopper.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for coming with us on the tour. You know I'm going to preach a little bit. Hopefully it won't be too long or too bad. But the reality is, I know that you folks all support education. I know it's important. And, you know, that certainly is good, and something that I appreciate. And within your function as budget committee members, I know that we sometimes have to look at things differently, but I do know how much you folks care about, you know, the students in the schools and in the community. Even if sometimes we have to agree to disagree. So, thank you. Up top is just a little reminder of how much expectations have shifted for us. If you want to think in the last 114 years how much expectations have changed, if you think of each decade in the 1900s, whatever that decade was pretty much matched the high school graduation rate. If it was the 30s, it was 30%. If it was the 60s, it was 60%. It's been, you know, inching up all along. So we went through the everybody graduates phase, and now we're basically at the point where we're saying, not only do we want all people to graduate, or virtually all, and if we don't have the expectation that all won't graduate, we won't get better at it. So we have to shoot for all, but they have to graduate to high standards. The title up top, Educational Goals and Expectations, Educational Opportunity and Success for All Students, because that really is the mandate. And for us, that becomes, you know, students being career and college ready, and there's lots of ways to define that. I'm going to make reference to the graph below. This is data from the recession and I'm going to call it a quote recovery from 2008 to 2012. It's work done out of Georgetown Public Policy Department. And if you look at the first half in light, the three different colors represent, the blue is a graph of jobs lost and then gained for people who have high school diplomas or less. The red is associate's degree or some college, and the green is students with a bachelor's degree or better. And people do not need a college degree to be successful. There are lots of people out there who are bright, who work hard, who do extremely well, in some cases phenomenally well. And I don't think that's ever going to change. But increasingly, the odds become more in one's favor as you get more education. And this graphic really bears that out. If you look at the bottom, those with a high school diploma or less lost 5.6 million jobs. These are U.S. figures in the recession. And then in what was deemed the recovery, in terms of economic output, lost a further 230,000 jobs. They're just not coming back for much of the work that can be done there. If you look at the red, the associate's degree or some college, basically start to end of the recession was, you know, lost 1.75 million jobs and gained 1.6 million back. So you're down 150,000 jobs over a 4 or 5 year span, this is break even. College or less actually gained 187,000 jobs halfway through the recession, or when the recession officially ended, although it was down to flatline for a time, and then gained another 2 million jobs in the recovery. So increasingly, the job market is more of a pyramid. We have fewer jobs that are the sorts of jobs that we would want our kids to aspire to. And the other thing is, if you look at international competition, India and China are now producing more students with engineering degrees, math degrees, science degrees than we have. I mean, in essence, they have more honor students than we have students. And what percentage of those students are going to schools where the instruction is in English? Pretty much 100%. I know when I was consulting with Intelitech, we're doing some curriculum work on the VEX robotics curriculum, and I was kept, finding copyrighted pictures and saying, we need an image like this to go in this shot. They would say, we'll send it out to our graphics people, and it would take 5 tries before they'd get it to be what I wanted. And I said, can we use another company? Because it must be costing us a fortune to do this 5 times. Could we send it to somebody? Well, we outsource to India. Okay, so what's it costing us? And the answer was $200. Is it $200 a graphic? No, $200 a month for a junior graphics person. Now, that was about 8 years ago, but still, cost comparison. So there are parts of jobs that are just not coming back. So we do have high expectations. People who get an education typically do it, because they value education themselves and they want to do good things for students. So we can't take our eye off that goal, even though we know that it's a pretty lofty goal. Down below, we've got a few topics that I'm going to highlight for you. Funding of special education services and supports as identified in IEPs. There's nothing that we've asked for in the budget that's not identified as required in IEPs. We've stabilized, after the original increase from, over a 5-year period, we went from, I think, 19.3% identified students down below 10. And then we were cited and essentially sued for our policies and procedures for identifying students, and we ended up identifying about another 120 students, and that was about 2 years ago that we got to that part. We still weren't staffed adequately, and we still have issues with areas of special certifications. We have a lot of special ed teachers who are general special education. We need more EH people. We need more people with learning disability certification. We advertise for it as highly desired, and we haven't been able to get anyone, quite honestly. And the only strategy that we have left really is to start to offer more PD to get more people qualified. That has some expense to it, but quite honestly, it's more expensive to outsource those services or to be taken due process. So we're doing what we can. We've not had success that way. We've had, I think, some really nice improvements over time in our special ed staffing. We're still at a higher para count than we would like, but I had a conversation with the special ed director, and I said, so, are we getting a significant number of identifications because parents are pushing and people caved in on requests? And her response was basically, no, I don't think so. The need is growing. If you talk to all of the people in the southern third of the state, all of the districts are reporting the same thing. We're kind of leveled off in the identified population, but the population is getting needier. So while we're still sitting a couple points below the state average, which is good, the state average is staying about the same. We're staying the same, but we're needing to provide more services. So, Mr. Burke, you and I talked about that when we were down at GMS last week, that when you see a school full of students there and you compare it to, what that group would have looked like 3 or 4 years ago, it's a noticeable difference. So not only do we have kids come in with more needs, the expectations have never been higher. So you've seen this creep of expectations from, students mainstreamed to now the expectation isn't that you'll be mainstream, but students will be successful. So we're really shooting for not just getting a year's growth for a year's instruction, but catch-up growth. So we have kids who, by the time they've been identified, have not fared well in school for a period of time, and so you have this catch-up area. And the real goal that we're shooting for, and we're starting to get with the students, is that catch-up growth, which will allow them to, graduate high school, potentially, many of them do some college work, and, be able to contribute and have a family-sustaining career and so on. And a lot of well, not a lot of, but many of our specialist ed students are some of our very brightest students. And to not give them the support that they need to become successful would be a loss as well. So our measures show that we're getting more academic growth. Kids are hitting their IEP goals and their targets. They're doing better in external assessments. And from that perspective, been very successful. I would have expected by now that we would have seen a peak in the para situation. As I say, when I walk through the schools and see the students that have come in, I recognize that in fact the need is there. And I think we have to start talking about how do we reduce we may have to spend a little bit more on special ed teachers in order to reduce paras. So the program model is one that we have to, I know I talked about that a little bit last year, but we really have to talk to how do we service as many kids as we can to educate them to high levels and do it in a financially responsible way. Math programming, 3 years ago, I think was the first year that the high school actually hit state average in math results. We've worked very, very hard in that in the last 3 years. The first year that I was here, 2012-13, was the first year that the high school had implemented an everyday geometry class. We had a lot of kids in geometry who really didn't have a solid algebra background, even though they'd taken Algebra 1 already. And so we instituted everyday geometry. And so the teachers had enough time, I think there's only one section, the teachers had enough time to backfill the algebra that they needed. That was the cost of a 6-block class, roughly $5,000 to $6,000 a year, but it was a great success. And it's one of the things, although it was remediation late in the sequence, which is the most expensive and least efficient way to do it, it was effective. We've seen a significant increase. We followed that last year with everyday algebra 1, and then this year with so this year we have everyday pre-algebra, everyday algebra 1, and everyday geometry. And that has come at a cost, not to the budget, but as I said earlier, to the range of courses that we offer as 6-block in other areas. We've always had extra 6-block classes in phys ed and in FACS, and those went away this year because we literally couldn't fund them. All of the 6-block money was used in math. Now, if the plan works, we should no longer need geometry every day in 15-16. Because the kids now have more years of more instructional time in additional math before they get to geometry. Remember, the original rationale was that they don't have strong algebra skills, and so we need to remediate algebra. We believe we've addressed that problem, and so, I'm going to task the high school with trying to explain to us why we shouldn't go back to a regular geometry, which will hopefully free up a little bit of money to be able to offer some of those electives. Other areas of math, because we know it's such a crucial class for people. We've always had AP Calculus. Ms. Angelini has added a small group of students the last 2 or 3 years that are taught in the calculus class who are taking a second calculus. So they take AP Calculus as juniors because their math program is accelerated, and then they take AP Calculus BC, the second sequence, in their senior year. And she is a fabulous teacher, and she actually teaches them within the regular class. The other thing that we did starting last year was we went, in order to increase the number of students who would sign up for AP Calculus, we put it to an everyday model. So this year we've used 5 6-block stipends, 1 for necessary class in Spanish and the other 4 for English. Everyday AP Calculus, everyday pre-algebra, algebra, and geometry. And so we'd like to back that out. We're also looking at, we have in the budget, one of the things we cut last year, Mr. Pascucci, was the AP stats textbooks. We're hoping to have a small class of AP stats next year. And if we reduce that geometry class, we would be able to do it at no cost. At LMS this year, we've added some capacity in math tutoring. As I said before, the sooner you remediate and the better you remediate, the better we're off in terms of results and cost. At LMS this year, LMS has always done double reading at grades 5, 6, 7, 8. And we still do double reading. So of the 5 academic subjects, they take English, language, arts, social studies, science, math, and they have an additional reading class at grade 5, 6, 7, 8. So the 5 and 6 are still that way. Grades 8 last year started not a reading class, but a literacy with technology class. So it's in a computer lab, and it's really about research, starting to get into argumentative writing, and enhancing the use of technology. So it is a literacy course, a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of research, and trying to get them ready to read and write and research at a high school level that much earlier. This year, instead of doubling up in reading at grade 7, we doubled up in math. 2 very good teachers. Of the 5 classes of grade 7 math, everybody gets 2 math periods a day. The group of students who are at grade level or slightly below get additional remediation time. So they will take the grade 7 math curriculum, but they'll have twice as much time each day for the entire year. Backfill. The teacher cost was the same because they still had 5 periods a day. It costs us about $2,400 for software that will be adapt to the students' needs. And when we built the lab at GMS last year, that freed up a set of laptops that's either 1 or 2 years old, and we brought that set up to LMS. I think we explained that to you in last year's budget. So that's what they'll be using. We suspect that we'll be able to use those laptops for at least another couple of years. So that's what we're doing there. The other 2 classes take grade 7 math in the first half of the year and grade 8 math in the second half of the year, setting up for Algebra 1 in grade 8. Now, we've had classes of Algebra 1 in grade 8, but the instructional sequence has been take 5 math, 6 math, 7 math, Algebra 1, which means they never get grade 8 math. And so they actually get double math, all of 7, all of 8 math before they take Algebra 1. Now, at the bottom of that page, you're looking at an accelerated program, and in Mr. Lechleiter's term, a distinguished and accelerated program, where students are identified, a small percentage of students, we're looking at 3 to 5% of kids who would be identified at the end of grade 4. And in grade 5, they would take regular grade 5 math, and we would use assessment results, teacher recommendations to identify a small group who would work independently but with some support at school to also take grade 6 math. They would then, in grade 6, they've already got grade 6 math, instead of going down the hall to the grade 6 math room, they would go down a different hall and go to a grade 7 math room, and they'd sit in with a group of grade 7s, which means as a grade 6 student, they would finish grade 7 and 8 math. As a grade 7 student, they would be sitting in the grade 8 Algebra 1 class, and then we could sign them up for VLAX and support them in school, and they would have geometry before they ever leave middle school. So they got Algebra 1 geometry, they walk into high school, and they'll be doing Algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus, AP stats, and really allow those kids to thrive at a pretty small cost. If you look at it, we don't add a teacher to do that. We've added, if you look at the budget later, I think about a $4,200 a year stipend to offer next year support after school for grade 6 and 8 students who would be doing the VLAX. Down the road, when we get a larger group, we may need to buy 6 or 8 laptops if we're fortunate enough to have that many kids. Because with the VLAX grade 8 math, they would be the only kids in the class doing, I mean, for the grade 7s doing Algebra 1, that's fine, but the grade 8s, we'd probably put them in the library with some support. But rather than pay a teacher a 6 block, if they're working that independently, after-school support should work. So we're trying to be creative. We're trying to support kids who are at the upper end. I mean, No Child Left Behind really was effective at focusing on special ed students, underachievement, children who were born into poverty, and children of color. what we took our eye off in a lot of ways, in many places, is the needs of that top 5 to 10%. And so we're trying to balance that. You know, we know we've invested a lot of money. And from my perspective, this is one of the best things that we can do, not just for this group of kids, but for us as a country and for our economy, is really invest a small amount of money to see these kids really be able to take this opportunity. It is risky because, quite honestly, parents want, I mean, if we say the top 3 to 5%, you know that there's going to be 8 or 9% of parents who want their kids in there. And we know we're going to get beat up over it. But we really think, and the easiest thing to do is just say no. But we don't think that would be right. So that's why we're doing this. Textbooks and other learning resources. Item 3 and 5 are very similar. Over the last, I'm going to say 5 to 6 years, we've inherited a deficit in both areas. If you look at what we've spent, and we will later in the budget, if we look at what we've spent on line item 640 and 641 on major textbook purchases, new courses, or replace an entire class set or grade level set. Actuals in 2010 and 11 were pretty low, but partly in a planned way, because those were the years that we were said, we're moving to the Common Core, higher expectations of reading and text complexity, and the books aren't there, so it'd be a waste of money to spend it. So by our calculations, fiscal 2010, 9-10 school year, we spent district-wide about $36,000 in textbooks. The next year, in 11, it was $51,000. In 12, it was $26,000. $50,000, my first year here, 12, 13, but we did a lot of reading textbooks that year. And then last year, with a huge math implementation, about $98,000. This year's budget is about $50,000, and the recommended budget is $114,500. And we're looking at this and we're going, wow, that's a huge increase from $40,000 to $50,000, and why is that? And then we looked. The further back we looked, the more we saw how little we had invested in textbooks and learning resources over a pretty extended period of time. And to me, what helped put it in perspective was I went and got the AP Calculus textbook. It's $132.56. The average high school textbook is probably close to $100. We have 500 kids in high school. Kids take basically 7 classes. If they need a textbook in 6 of those 7 classes, to buy 1 book a year for every kid in high school would be $50,000 in the budget. So 1 book would be new, 1 would be in its 2nd year of use, another in its 3rd, its 4th, its 5th, and 6th year. So you'd get a book replacement cycle of 7 years, and all the costs would be $50,000 a year at the high school. And we've averaged $52,000 K to 12. So by the time you say textbooks at the middle school, 1 per year, 5 core subject areas, right? Or 4 core plus 1 other in unified arts. Even if it's $60 a book, that's another $30,000. And even if you only had major textbooks in grades 3 and 4, that's another $20,000. All of a sudden you're $100,000. So we've been underspending on those educational resources for a significant period of time. Very similar to what we've done in building maintenance. We have accrued a deficit in terms of the resources that we need in both of those areas. So we're actually trying to address them this year. And when you look at the 114, and say, well, gosh, this must be a one-time hike, we really think that's where we need to be year in, year out. And we've done some things administratively to try and manage it better and report it better. So you'll see this actually taken, the 640 and 641 lines, that the regular purchase a few textbooks because we need some, and the anthologies and the novels really haven't been included. That's still in the replacement line. But these are the major textbook purchases when we do grade level or classes. And we've asked the schools to do a complete inventory of all books at all buildings. And some of the news is pretty good. I mean, math and English were in pretty good shape and will be for the next few years. But if we don't spend this kind of money in science and social studies in the next few years, then we'll be back to a math and English replacement, which is going to be pretty hefty because we'll be into year 6 of that. So that's kind of where we are with the book. In some cases, an 8-year-old book isn't a big deal. In other cases, an 8-year-old book is a big deal. And so, we'll be just letting you know that we don't see this as a one-year spike. This is kind of where we need to be year in, year out. And over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have to try to find a way to track it, and instead of talking about textbooks, we'll be talking about electronic as well as text resources. So we keep track of this as a pipeline as we go through. Does that make sense? Because if we start to do, electronic textbooks and things like that, we're not at the point really that that's going to be a major saving, even on the textbook side, let alone enough saving. People have been predicting for a while that you'll save enough money on the textbooks to pay for the technology, and it's not. That $132 AP calculus textbook, you can get a 1-year lease on the software for $56. So in 3 years, it's cost you more for that contract than it would for the book that you probably could have used for 5 or 6 years. So, and the last issue that's in there, which I jumped over for, instructional technology. The high school does a lot of good work. We're looking at a new student information system. We visited Bow to look at Infant Campus on Wednesday. We're going over to Londonderry sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks to look at fall at Aspen. We need to get away from our existing student information system, which is essentially failing. We've had cases where we're going up to report card day and not knowing whether or not we're going to be able to email out report cards to high school students. It's a program that they stopped actually supporting. Its biggest asset, from my perspective and from Kyle's perspective, is its client base at this point in time. And they look like they're just waiting to be bought out to have somebody like Pearson take them over. And so we pay stipends to teachers to try and make this work back of house. Dennis Perot does a wonderful job. In order to run our report cards, Dennis has to go into the system. He has to manually roll over the grades every 2 weeks, which is why we do it every 2 weeks, because it's a manual thing as opposed to automatic updates. With either of the two new systems, basically when the teacher enters the grade and hits enter, it's posted. You use the parent portal, the students can get it. You can get push notifications of grades. In the case of Aspen, you can set your threshold. So I got a kid who, I'll be thrilled if they get a 75, so you set your threshold. Let me know if there's a grade that comes up less than 75. And I have another kid who should be in the 90s. I can set 2 different thresholds to get those notifications, or I can just log on, or I can say anytime a grade is posted, let me know, or anytime anything is posted, if it's a tardy, if it's an absence, if it's an anything. So tightening up that communication is a very big thing. Both systems also have some learning management functionality, more like an online class, that will allow students to use technology better. But the real goal is to pilot freshman one-on-one computing a year from this September, so September of 16-17. The high school should be eligible for a next-gen grant of about $25,000 that year. So we're trying to ramp up and be able to offer some pilot freshman classes, get the teacher technology working and getting them learning the skills. So essentially students would sign up for regular Algebra 1 or bring your own device one-on-one next year. And so if we just get one section that every kid is going to have a laptop that meets a certain standard or a tablet that meets a certain standard, then the teacher can go ahead and plan on every kid having a piece of technology. And that way they're working on their pedagogy a year ahead of what we actually go to. Now the first year of the grant, it would be about $25,000, which for a class of, entering freshman class of about 125 is $200 per student. A Chromebook is much more than that. So it doesn't take much money to get to a freshman group with that much money. If you do this as some sort of lease to purchase, by the next year you're into something where if everybody's paying whatever a year, now you have 2 groups of students and their parents paying a lease to own to pay for one group of incoming freshmen. The 3rd year it's 3 groups of parents. The 4th year is 4 groups of parents. So you could literally do it, if it was a $400 device and you did it as an annual $100 lease purchase to own, by the time you got it fully functioning, it would pay for itself. But it still means infrastructure. It still means the density of wireless that you need according to folks that I've talked to, I was at a conference down in Boston a couple of weeks ago, is basically 2 Wi-Fi connections for every kid, because they've got their phones and they've got their laptops. And so we need to significantly increase the density of the coverage and the connections that we have. Our bandwidth is pretty good. We're in a good place in service structure, you know. I think our tech department has done a great job in the last 4 or 5 years, and both the board and the budget committee have really, really supported us. We're kind of flatlined this year in this area, but we're still moving that amount of money is still gonna allow us to do, not just stay status quo, but move ahead. The biggest difference really is that we have failing phone systems at all 3 schools. Campbell, was it just this fall, Frank, or was it this fall, died on us. When the school was built, it was a used phone system that was installed. And so even though the school's only 15 years old, the phone system is 20. And we lost a major component, and so we had to call the vendor and scrounge around for a spare part, scavenged from someplace else. And on the second or third try, we got one that actually worked, and we could use. For a while, we had no phones, and then we actually had phones, but no voicemail. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then by the time we got all of the scabbed pieces back, we had it running. But GMS and LMS are the same length, and GMS phones went down last year. So we originally put into the budget to replace the phones with GMS and LMS at $30,000 apiece with voice over IP, which over time will save us money. And the board cut out LMS, feeling that GMS, since they had already failed once and gone through the same process, were probably a greater need. So if you look at the increase in technology budget, a lot of it is that. So we'll probably end up trying to do one system in 15-16, one in 16-17, one in 17-18, and then we should be good for another, 15 to 20 years. And that's kind of where we are with that. That's the kind of bigger picture things in scope.
So you've got sort of 5 areas you've outlined here. You've got special ed, math, textbooks, technology, and building and grounds. What is your number 1 priority? If you had to pick one as the most important thing you needed to focus on?
Well, I think special ed is an absolute requirement. The biggest piece for me is actually going to be the warrant article on the new technology position. That student information system, we can fund the cutover out of the E-rate money that we've been saving year after year. So the cutover costs, if we are able to get a contractor, if we can identify a vendor, write a contract, and start working on the cutover, then it'll take us from January 1st until probably mid-August to get everything done. You have to scrub the data, you have to pull at least 6 years of data forward, you have to set up all your systems again. That contract with an external consulting and having them come and do it is pretty expensive. We'd like to think that if the warrant article passes, we would be able to actually use some E-rate money to hire the person early, because it would actually save us money and build capacity. So if we're going to have that second person, I don't know, if we don't have the second person, we'll have more functionality than we do now. The ongoing costs are actually lower for the newer system. That's the odd thing about it. We didn't do this to get savings, but they're actually savings because we don't use as many stipends back of house. And the subscription fees of one are about level, and the other one is actually cheaper. So if we can get to the new system with the functionality that we have now and a little bit more, with only using E-rate money, that'll be a great thing. Worst case scenario in that case is, if we don't get everything that we need to do it the way we want to, then at least we're in a new system, and when we can afford it, we can add the extra functionality down the road. So my hope that would be that we would be at least into the whole entire database structure, the grade book, and a parent portal, and some learning management functionality. But we might have to wait on some of the learning management functionality as into the second year. I know the board is wondering whether or not we'll need 2 people over more than the first couple of years. The site visit at Bow that we're at Wednesday of this week, I talked with their superintendent, who I know quite well, and their IT director. They have a very similar size district, 3 schools, 1 elementary, 1 middle, 1 high school, about 1,500 kids. Their budget is about $4,000 per kid per year higher than ours, which equates to over $5 million a year difference. And they have 1 tech director who does database. His expertise is database. The assistant director is their server person. And then they have 3 half-time people in each of the schools to do tech support. So what the model we were looking at was, well, we have 1 server person, Kyle, who is leaving and going to Hudson as soon as we can find a suitable replacement, and we've posted for that now. We'd need a database person to look after the student information system, and then we have a junior position as well that's funded at basically an entry tech level, which Brian Anker is in. So that would put us at 3 full-time. They have 2 full-time and 3 half-times. There may be some advantages to one model over the other, but they're not overstaffed. They do well, and they don't have huge costs for external contract work at that level of staffing. But I would say that the technology position and the
Instructional
piece to go
technology
with
is your, okay. Anybody else have a question or comment?
I got a couple of questions on the budget, but other than...
Can you hold off till we get to the budget, or is this something that we're going to need?
Well, we asked for revenues. Don't see them yet.
Do we have revenues? I know we have some information on the 2014.
They haven't been presented to the school board yet. Revenue projections for 2015?
Yep.
Yeah.
They're not done.
When can we expect those?
Were they on your schedule? Were they on this?
Usually we get them when we get the budget, so, and I know last year we didn't, right, Bill? And so I think Bill was concerned that we'd get them this year a little sooner.
Yeah, you can have them next meeting.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot, quite frankly, to the revenue projections, because there's not a whole, you're trying to project out a year and a half down the road.
Yep.
We do have a number on the adequacy aid, but to the extent that we'd know, everything else will be pretty much flat, but we can provide that to you.
Well, it gives us a handle because we're going to get an anticipated valuation.
Oh, I understand that, Bill.
Look at this, so
I
it gives us a
understand.
handle with it.
But again, we're trying to project out revenues year and a half from now.
Understand the problem.
So there's not a whole lot that we can do creatively.
Second thing I had is, when I look at the book we have, it's not set up to review by schools, salaries are separate, GMS operation costs are separate, so I'm wondering how we're going to review the budget.
I haven't looked at it, so
I just looked at some, that's why.
well, the way we have it set up is I tried to follow with the school district how they reviewed it, which is our schedule, which is school board, SAU curriculum,
Right.
CHS another night, LMS, GMS another night, technology, building, grounds, transportation, special services. So I'm not sure how we received it, but that's how they reviewed it, so I'm assuming they've got a method to their madness.
Well, I don't know how we'll do that because salaries are all lumped together. Unless we go section by section and jump around. We can do that, I guess.
So,
When you used to get a complete package on GMS with everything in there associated with GMS, including salaries.
and that's what it looks like we have.
No, you don't. The salaries are all separate, one separate lump. Everything is in there. You go to your tab on GMS, and there's salaries in GMS. At least not in my book.
That is the way the school board requested and received and reviewed the budget this year, and that's the way it's been presented to the budget committee. There is one grouping for all salaries and benefits. The board felt that because there was very little discretion in salaries and benefits, they looked at it as one group and then looked at all the operational costs for all the other function areas.
So, for example, when we get to CHS, how are we going to review CHS, and are we going to review, like, the salaries and benefits for CHS?
No.
So.
That's not the way the board did. It's up to you, how you, again, the practical approach is to look at salaries and benefits as a group, because if it's by location, it really, most of their salaries, you see, the major portion of the salaries are collective bargaining positions. So to the extent that they're at CHS or LMS or GMS, it brings no bearing to the budget.
So how would we, so if we said on Thursday, December 4th, we're only reviewing Campbell High School, if we added salaries and benefits to that night, can someone come in and talk to us about that?
We can talk to you about that.
Oh, okay. Is that what you're
Is that
looking
what
for,
you
Bill?
want? That's not the way it's in your book.
No, it seems to be.
No, it's not.
All right, Bill, explain what you're looking for then.
Bill's looking
Go
for
to your
budget by
tab.
location.
Salaries to be in.
Frank's already said it. Go to salaries and benefits.
Yeah?
Okay, it has everything in there, all the salary and benefits for all the locations.
Right.
Okay? And if we want to review salaries and benefits in one fell swoop, then we can do it. That's the way the school board apparently.
Yeah.
did it. Okay, that's not how the schedule's set up. That's all I'm saying.
No, and that's what I'm saying. It's not, and that's what I'm saying. We could add that, for example, to the night that we review CHS and add salaries and benefits to that night, Thursday, December 4th.
Right, and if that were the case, it would be nice if they just gave us a printout on GMS with the total, everything in there, including salaries and benefits to work from, as opposed to floating back and forth, which is what we'll wind up doing.
So you
That's my only
want,
thought.
so just for the 3 schools?
That's what we did last year. That's how we got it last year.
Okay, I don't remember that, but that's fine. So can we do that then? So when we review CHS, can we get one lump total of everything to review?
Cindy, understand, I have no objection going through the full salaries as a separate item, but if we
I
do that,
hear
we
you.
have to just restructure the
We
meeting.
we
That's all.
can. We can.
The only difference is you want to see salaries and benefits by location, salaries and benefits and operational costs by location. Or, and there are advantages to that. There are also advantages to saying, so what's salary and benefits and what's happening at that location? And now let's look at the operational budget.
Well, I think that's what Bill's saying. We want to look at the total of GMS and compare it to the total of GMS last year. Is that what you are looking for? So that we can see what's going on within a school?
I don't really care.
mean,
All
you
I'm
have
saying
that-
is that if we're gonna do salaries separately, we have to schedule it
I
that
believe
way.
she put in the entire budget in there. So that would show by location. I mean, we can give it to you any way you want.
Right.
I think the general consensus needs to be, how do you want? We gave it to you the same way the school board reviewed and approved the operating budget. So if you want it differently, we can give it to you any way you want. We just need a little lead time to get that prepared for you.
Yeah, and I copied what I thought was how the school board reviewed it off of your schedule. There is no, on that schedule, there is no salaries and benefits as a separate discussion that I saw.
It was by the school board.
Okay, I missed that then.
It was the last presentation that was made specifically to the board, special education and salaries and benefits.
Okay. Then we need to add salaries and benefits in. I think that's the easiest thing to do. And like I said, it looks to me that we have one night with just a single topic of CHS, which I don't believe should be outrageously long. No? Yes? Brian?
Campbell High School?
Could be.
That'll be the longest one.
May I offer up a suggestion that if you put salaries and benefits as a separate night, that night, we can report and break it out for you by location. So that you'll see the sum total of salaries and benefits. Again, that is 75% of the operating budget of the district, so that's why it took so long for us to compile that, and there's a lot of work that goes involved.
Right.
So we can give you that night prior to that evening, obviously. We'll break it out by location for you, so you can look at. I think it's important for the budget committee as well, the board, I think, agreed to look at what are the operational costs outside of salaries and benefits that these schools are operating with. What kind of money is CHS, GMS, LMS operating with outside of salaries and benefits? It gives you a more precise picture of just how difficult sometimes it can be operating the school. And we can, at the night that you want to review, that you put on your agenda, we'll break it out for you by location. So you can see SAU, district-wide, in the 3 buildings as well. So we can break it out for you that way.
And you're right, I did miss it the night that you reviewed special services. I was going back and forth between last year's.
Right.
We didn't have it separate, as a separate night last year. So I did miss it on the school district's review. Does it make sense then, if you were able to review it with special services, does it make sense then to add it to the same night that we're doing special services?
You know, it does. Again, I don't mean to minimize, because a lot of work goes into developing salaries and benefits. But again, the major portion of salaries and benefits is scheduled per the collective bargaining agreement. And you'll see as a percentage, the hourly employees is a small percentage. So we were able to handle it at the school board level, both of those issues in one evening.
You're suggesting combining salaries and benefits with sped?
It's a heavy night, though. I will say, it is a heavy night.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
Sped'll be a heavy night, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
They all appear to be heavy nights. I'm open for suggestions. Is there
Yeah.
another night you want to tack it on to?
Well,
I'm sorry.
it seems to me that if you start thinking about the operational costs at the schools, I don't think they're anywhere near as contentious as some of the salaries and benefits and sped will be. So to me, unless there's something really unusual happening, it seems to me that the three schools' operational costs can go pretty easily.
If I may, through the chair, the only reason we put those two on the end of the night was to bring the data and as much information as current as we could to the board, so we purposely put them on at the end, not because of the ease in which we presented to the board. So with special ed, it's so fluid, we wanted to bring more current numbers and do it as late in the process as we possibly could. I agree. I think maybe splitting those two up, there is a lot there. The operational costs of the CHS, GMS, and LMS, they are what they are. There are some areas in there that would need some discussion to the budget committee, but I think for the most part, splitting those two up might not be a bad idea.
Okay. I'm open then. We're back to December 4th when we review CHS, or we can do December 9th where we do the other two schools. Anybody have a preference? All right, I'm gonna stick it on CHS then.
That way we'll have them for the other two schools
Yep.
beforehand.
Yep, so we will review salaries and benefits then on Thursday, December 4th. All right, any other?
Yeah, and the last one is, you'll be frank in a second. I looked at your budget snapshot, which is good, and you have this sort of broken down by function and object. You're going to actually give us the other function object that we normally look at, which is the total.
Bill, if you want it, we'll give it to you.
You know, if you give it to us the way we got it last year, then it gives us a good way of comparing year to year to year to year on a total basis.
We
Okay?
can do that.
Okay.
Okay, Cindy?
Yep. Is that all right? Okay. Yeah, if you could. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the school overview?
If I may, through the chair, can I just take 2 minutes, and I will take only 2 minutes on
Okay.
I think it's important for the budget committee, as we did with the board, to give you some perspective of what happened in 2014, so that we're obviously in our 2015 budget now, and we're looking at 2016, so when you start putting those calendar dates together, it is far out. But I did want to, and I just will give you a quick overview, and it appears we gave you the same page twice, but the handout is referred to as the fiscal year 2004 financial review. I tried to break it into obviously the major components of revenue, expenditure, and how we came about our unassigned fund balance for the year, because it was substantial and it did have an impact on the town's tax rate setting. The first page is 2014 revenues, and again, I'm just going to hit the highlights for you. We had unanticipated revenue in 2014 of over $340,000. That was, we project out in September when we set the tax rate, we project out what we anticipate receiving for revenues for that year. And as you can see, it was substantially over. And there were two major areas in which it was over. One being, you probably heard that Health Trust was actually, there was a claim against Health Trust by municipalities that they were moving some money out of one. I won't get into the specifics of it, but bottom line is that the Health Trust was required to refund back to the participating school districts and municipalities a certain sum of money. For the town, for the school district, we experienced well over $238,000 with that. That was the district's portion of the refund from Health Trust. So that was substantial. The other area that was quite substantial was also our Medicaid reimbursement. That is the cost that the district incurs for the students on its IEPs that we're required to provide certain medical services to them that actually are reimbursed by Medicaid if the family is eligible for such a reimbursement. So, and that's a wild card. That's probably one of the more difficult areas of revenue projection that we have in a school district budget, because you just don't know from one year to the next how many students are going to be there, the Medicaid eligibility of those students, and they're constantly changing the guidelines on Medicaid and the reimbursement of that.
Frank, just a quick.
Sure.
Is that current reimbursement? What do I mean by that? In SPED?
SPED we get it the year after.
The year after.
This is a monthly coming in, so we're, as every month, we're putting in for that reimbursement, so it's a rolling through the 12-month period, yes. So as you can see, again, revenues far exceeded our projections in 2014. Local revenue, again, you can see local and state taxes accounts for over 85% of the revenue to operate the Litchfield School District. Again, I'll just go over this quickly. The next page, which is salaries and benefits for fiscal year 2014, again, I'll go briefly. Salaries, certified salaries, professional staff, that represents over 53% of our costs for salaries. And combine that with our para costs, that accounts for approximately 90% of the total cost of the salaries that go on here in the Litchfield School District. We did exceed our total appropriation in 2014 for salaries by less than 1%, but it did exceed by $88,000.
Just a quick question, that one's
Sure.
different. The 2014 budget number is your default number, correct?
Correct.
Not the budget that was recommended by the budget committee?
Well, it was ours, but with that, the budget number that you're seeing is the amended budget number. So in other words, we moved some money around.
And that goes through,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
And again, the detail of all of this is down below as well. Benefits represent 21% of the total operating expenditure, so those two combined, you can see we're about 74% of our total expenses go to salaries and benefits for the district. Health insurance and teacher retirement account for 72.4% of that. And again, our largest variance, which wasn't substantial, but there was a variance of approximately $13,000. The district, our cost in 2014, our share of the healthcare cost was almost $2 million in 2014. It looks like we repeated our revenue on page 3. I'll provide you with a slip page and change that. That was just a breakdown of all the expenditures. Page 4 is my attempt to provide you some information as to how the unassigned fund balance and consequently how that number is reported out when we restate our revenue projections and utilizing that for tax rate setting. As I explained to you, our revenues for the year in 2014 were over projection by over $300,000. We underspent the budget by over $500,000. So our appropriations, we underspent our appropriations by $500,000. We received over $300,000, and the unassigned fund balance is the sum of the two. We received more than we expected, and we spent less than we wanted to. So the combination of those two is how you designate your unassigned fund balance. Part of that, however, the question I've gotten since we've stated our unassigned fund balance is why so high? Well, we had no control of the revenue. We had a lot of control over the expenditures. That's probably the important area that we look at is how can we look at reallocating some of that money before the end of the fiscal year. And as you saw in the tour today, science was in need of some things and FACS is in need of some things. The school board, my understanding is some time ago, made an understanding with the budget committee that there are certain areas that we would not reallocate that money, and specifically in this area of special education. And if you look below in this sheet, of the $519,000 that we underspent the budget in 2014, $486,000 of that can be tied to special education. And I gave you I won't go through it in detail, but those are the numbers. So we did not reallocate that money. So if you look at the bottom line, is the expenditures, the net of that is $32,000, or less than one-tenth, a little bit more than 1/10 of 1%.
But didn't you take 50,000 of that for a warrant article
That was this year.
this year?
Yep. That was last year's warrant article that we took,
Came out of this
not in
fund?
2014.
Didn't come out of this fund?
No. So people said, well, why didn't you spend down more? Because again, the agreement that we had was we did not reappropriate, if you will, the funds that were in special education. And part of the savings in special education, you'll see in areas of specialized services, but a lot of it was programmatic. So that, again, we left the money there. We did not reallocate it over to regular ed or athletics or anything else. That was the agreement. We kept it. So all of that combined contributed to the high number on the unassigned fund balance.
And I guess just, I mean, I noticed some new members that I already know, because I remember when I first started here, we had a conversation about that. When it comes to special education, sometimes it's a crapshoot. You really
Right.
don't know.
Right, you don't know.
You want to be careful. I mean, it's something you have to fund.
Right.
It has to get done. So you have to, I mean, so the agreement was, look, we might overfund this, but if we do, everybody knows that they're not going to spend it if you don't need it. So
Right.
that's the reason, and I, thank you for explaining it the way you did, so everybody understands.
True.
So the real amount of money left over was $32,000.
Well, again, there's self-funded programs, which we've always had that conversation, if we
Right.
put X amount of dollars, it always gets underspent, so that was underspent by 17. Then we have instructional staff training, which by agreement with the LEA, that money stays there as well, so there was 43. But the majority of it was special ed, so when all that is said and done, we had approximately 32,000 out of our almost $20 million budget.
Yeah, so you basically
Left over.
spent what you had appropriated in
We
the
pretty much
default
did.
budget.
Yeah, we pretty much expended out all of our appropriations, excluding the special ed area, and excluding self-funded and excluding
Now,
sectional
if you
training.
had set your special ed default number at a different number, you would have had more money to spend on your regular program. If you had anticipated that you'd be
Right.
underspending by as
But it-
much as you did.
But again, that is difficult to do because you're going into the year, and the Director of Special Service does a great job. But as we all know, if you're able to move one student from a residential placement back into the district, that may not happen right away. It happens during the school year, or you have a move-in in January, so.
Yeah, the 72.
Yeah, I mean, we could have.
The transportation.
But then I
number
would
gets
explain
me.
out why we reallocate that money out of special education in July and August, and rather just leave it there, and we kind of lived up to the obligation that we would leave the special ed money there.
I'm sure you recognize the problem we now have, though, because we're going to be looking at a major increase in the school budget and a major increase in the tax rate because of the fact that we were able to depress this year's tax rate because of this.
It's a
That's gonna
double-edged
be a
sword, we
very, very,
understand
very hard
that. I mean,
sell.
it would have been, would I have been doing a service to the district if I had reallocated that money and said I never heard about the agreement that they made with the school? I did, I upheld the merit of what the agreement was back then, and we didn't move the
Well,
money
you,
around.
I will
It is, and it is a double-edged by editorializing, it's a double-edged sword. We turned over almost $800,000 in unassigned fund balance to offset this year's operational cost.
But I think it's good we're talking about it.
Right.
People are listening and
So
they
you
know
understand,
what's
absolutely.
going on behind the story, because I believe we will
Right.
get further with the way we're
Right.
doing it now.
Oh, absolutely.
But I will say this, that I don't believe that what you put in the default budget for the SPED costs we're talking about are the same ones that the Budget Committee had recommended you use. I don't believe that. I think you went back to your original numbers, and that's what caused you part of the problem here.
All right, and just so that you know, we did get that as a document, and we do have the correct page.
Oh, you do, okay, so
Yeah.
it must have
So-
been
so
my,
everybody
so they messed
has
with me.
it in
All
their-
right, so they messed with me.
Forwarded
not you.
it today,
Good,
so-
glad.
Yeah.
Yeah, messed with you? You didn't get it all?
All right, so that is our overview for the school district. And we thank you very much, and we all get a week's rest, and then we go back at it.
A lot of homework to do
Double
now.
time, I know. Now you got a week to absorb all this. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
the tour, for your input tonight. All right. To town, and we... Better wake up. The first thing under town business is town valuation. And we had that. We received that this afternoon. I don't see it though.
The town valuation for 2015
There it
goes
is.
up approximately $6.1 million, and it gives you a new valuation of $829,785,848. Again, the number 6.1 million, 829,785,848.
That's hard to say, isn't it?
But that document was forwarded to us?
Yes, I
I
did
did not
forward
get a
it.
chance to open.
Yep. Let me just double check. It doesn't look like it, but I thought I did. Town valuation. I thought that I did, but now I'm not sure.
Looking, I don't see it.
It says FYI.
I didn't get a copy back.
All right, so maybe I didn't then. Maybe I didn't. Let's do that then. My apologies. We seem to get everything on the last day.
Hot off the press.
All right, I've just forwarded that email. Although, actually, I don't see an attachment.
There's no attachment.
It's just, okay.
It's just an email.
All right,
There's only two numbers.
okay.
Big numbers.
All right, so we should, you should get that then as an email. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, any questions, comments? All right, moving on to budget voting. Our first item is town insurance. Any changes, reductions, additions? All right, hearing none?
Hang on a second, I just want to check some notes, if you don't mind a second.
Actually, there's.
We're expecting health insurance, by the way, just to give you, we're on insurance, but we're expecting health insurance numbers the second week of December. And property liability should be $61,505.
Yes, I just noticed that. I had highlighted that in my notes. So, does anybody want to make a motion to make it the actual, no?
I'll make a motion to adjust the property liability insurance to $61,505.00.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? That represents the actual bill. All right. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor of changing line 520 general liability insurance to the actual $61,505, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that passes. Which would be 8-0. Any further changes? Moving on to Police Department, 4210.1.
Before you get into that, and I don't have the line, it's line number 760, which is the cruiser purchase line, and this is in response to Mr. Spencer's question about, are there parts of the cruiser that can be transferred out, stuff like that. I have a note here from Jason that in discussions with the chief, they're recommending that the reducing line 760 purchase to a new total of $105,711 would be consistent with the information from the chief as to stuff we can pull off the cruiser for the new one type thing.
So, say that again, 105,
105,711.
711. Is there a motion to reduce, and let me see what do you have the actual reduction is?
I don't have the actual reduction, unfortunately, no.
So that's a reduction of $2,229.
How much is it?
Say that again?
$2,229?
$1,229.
Yeah, no, wait, you lost me here. Oh, okay.
Yes, on line 760.
Yep, so online, are you making a motion to that effect?
I will make a motion to adjust line 760 to what did I say?
105.
105, 711, a reduction of $2,229.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm surprised that's how little it is, the reduction is. I mean, the equipment is over $13,000.
Mostly, I'll read you exactly what the note says. It says, Joe's information below, a few things can be removed. A number of items built in and/or are retained, particularly light package. So reducing line 760 goes to a total of 105, 711 would be consistent with the information from the chief. So light package stays because you're, right? What you're really taking out of the cruiser is the cage. The cage.
So the light pack and everything else that's in there costs about $12,000 then.
Well, there's also computerized equipment and everything else.
It goes
that's
in there, it stays there? It doesn't come up?
That's my understanding. I can get you more detail on it. I don't have the details.
I'm surprised, Frank, honestly.
Mhm.
Any further discussion?
You want more detail on
If-
exactly?
If the committee is satisfied, okay.
Are we talking about the police cruiser?
Yes,
Uh,
line
then-
760.
No.
All right, there's a motion to make line 760 PD cruiser purchase and change that to 105, 711, which is a reduction of $2,229. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes 8-1. Any other changes, reductions, additions?
I just have a question, not currently a reduction request or anything, but I would like some clarification. Under administration salary, and similar question for, so 110 and 111. Article 8 of last year's warrant articles approved a 2% raise for the police officers. We have here a couple of people who are receiving in excess of 6%. Just curious as to why.
Any upgrades?
There's, I think Mr. Hope explained that there's some people going up, I think, to master offices, that type of stuff, as I understand it.
But I'm just.
But as far as 6%, I don't believe there's anything 6% in there that would be given to the person. We are obligated to give them the 2% by the contract, but that's it.
All right, well, for example, the captain percentage goes from 74,880 to 80,621. That's an increase in the proposed budget of 7.6%.
Captain's non-bargaining, so that's not contract.
I'm
So
sorry?
I said captain is a non-bargaining position, so that's not contract, that's not affected by the union contract. So this would be a result of the captain's promotion from lieutenant to captain, as well as,
So he would not have been
Salary
reflected
increase.
in the last year's captain salary?
no, he would have been a lieutenant at that time.
So we had 74,880 for a captain we didn't have. I'm just saying, we had a line item of 74,880. You're saying that he was promoted, which is why it's 80,621. So my question would be then, why we had the 74,880 on the captain line item to begin with? Are we,
There
did we get
wouldn't
rid of
have-
the captain?
There was a lieutenant that was promoted to a captain,
Right, so his salary previously would have been under a lieutenant rate.
right?
So that, then would not be comparing apples to apples if I were looking at that. I'm looking at what the captain percent salary was last year versus
Actually-
what the proposed one is.
There
If
was
you,
no captain last year.
right, if you want, we can put a line in that says lieutenant and shows 0 for this year.
That's the lieutenant's salary.
The 74,880 is lieutenant?
Yes.
Yes,
So this is sort of following the person,
Oh,
not
so-
the position.
right.
Okay.
Ooh.
That's the confusion, because we try to keep it.
So then a similar situation for the officer who went from 49 to 52, which is 6.2%.
49 to 52. I'm not sure which line you're talking about.
Under 111,
Okay.
I don't know if you, the officer went from 49,452 to 52,520, which is a 6.2% raise. Is it a similar situation where he was promoted? Because, like, again. the
In
article-
particular with Officer Ivas, I don't know.
You know,
Well, my concern is the taxpayers approved 2% raise. It appears as though we're giving more than that. I'm just curious as to why that would be. That's all. I'm not looking to move it. I just want to understand it before I make any motions.
What it says below is that people got degrees, so that would bump them up to a different scale.
Okay.
So, don't know which of these people attained degrees that bumped them up, but I would assume then that's gotta be the reason why.
Those are anticipated, though.
Yeah, that's not.
Oh, those are right,
So that would
which
be
would
good.
still show your budget, you budgeted
But that would be
the
for-
anticipated increase.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That would
But,
not be on
but
the
that doesn't go under the salary line. I'm glad to get the information if it's,
Like I said, I'm not looking to make any changes right now. I'm just trying to understand before I do.
Yeah, last year's budget was funny on that particular officer, because it was, in the budget last year is $951 per week on an hourly rate. And I don't know why it was done that way. I don't even know what that worked out for hourly rate.
I'm just looking at the numbers for the default budget revised versus the proposed budget. And for consistency's sake, I had an issue with another large raise. This is again another large raise, so I'm looking for some clarification.
Any further motions?
Yeah, I wish Andrew was here, but I have a problem with the overtime, and I'm not sure what I want to do with it.
which, were you talking about 140, Bill?
144.
Yeah, not 40. Let me take a crack at it and then see if you want to go along with it. Line 144, overtime court. What I want to do with that. I'd move that to $4,000.
There's a motion to move line 144, PD overtime court, to $4,000, you said?
Yes.
I'll second that.
And we had a good discussion about that at the meeting. As I recall, the year-to-date is less than 4,000, I forgot what it is right now.
3,400 is what my notes say
What
that
is
we
it?
have year-to-date
Yeah.
at the last meeting.
And the explanation was the prosecutor was doing more than he had been, and the officer didn't have to go. Part of my problem is when I looked at the total overtime budget, it's up significantly, and I think it's over budgeted in total. But as we discussed, it's difficult to say where it should be assigned to. I was comfortable with the overtime for the officers, I was comfortable with the overtime for the captain. This one I was not comfortable with. So that's, just looking at what they're doing this year, that looked like 4,000 was a reasonable number.
Any further comments? All right, the motion is line 144, PD overtime court, move that line to 4,000, which is a reduction of $4,130. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Aye.
And any abstentions? So that is 6-2, motion passes.
And again, as I told you, I think the total overtime budget is out of whack. And the other one I'll make a suggestion on is on overtime.
You're talking
The training.
140?
Training, 149. No, I think 140 is reasonable, Frank, I think.
Okay. I just want to make sure I
Yeah,
know which one you're talking about.
149, overtime, training. And I'd move that to $29,000.
Okay, there's a motion to move line 149, PD overtime training, to $29,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, I looked at what we did last year, where we were same time last year, looked at where we are this year, same time, what that would prorate out to. I recognize that they held some things off, and they did tried to take a reduction in what they needed, and this taking into account that all the officers don't necessarily work overtime for training. But I still thought the total budget was overstated. So I took a slight reduction in this particular line item.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of reducing line 149, PD overtime training, from $34,997 to $29,000, which is a reduction of $5,997, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
And any abstentions? So that passes 6-2.
I just want to say, just obviously to get it on the record, is that, because I know sometimes things are misconstrued, we are not against training for the officers, at least I'm not, and I'm speaking for, I should be speaking for everybody here. It's just we're going by what historically they use and what we think they're going to use. So we are not against officer training.
And year-to-date, we're, as of last week when it was presented to us, we were at 14,000. So they still had some room, or another double that to go. Another 14,000 to go before they reach their default budget number from last year, or current year. Any further motions?
Line 349, the Child Advocacy Center, I spoke last week. I'd like to move that to health agencies, so reduce that line to 0 here. And then when time becomes appropriate, to open it to the other one.
All right, there's a motion to reduce line 349, Child Advocacy Center, from $1,900 to 0, which is a reduction of $1,900. Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
It's previously been in the health agencies. Yes, it's a service that the town uses, but so is Meals on Wheels. I think it's a good way for the town to see what services and groups that we support outside of the budget. By putting it in this budget, it gets lost. Whereas if it's in the health services, where all the other, for whatever purposes, charitable uses, it's more transparent to the taxpayer as to what above and beyond we are spending.
The only problem with that is that the way the other services are being presented will be as a separate warrant article. If that fails, then the police
Well, we
can't make use of this at all.
No.
We cannot make use of them?
Nope.
If we don't pay them?
Not if it
Not if
fails.
it's on their warrant.
Yeah,
And this is a critical function that the police department uses on every year,
Well, I
That,
understand that, but I'm
if I could finish. And the concern I have is exactly the concern that's raised, that if we move that to a warrant article, or conversely, if the budget committee wants to put it into the budget as an expenditure for all of the services, that's fine. But if we use it as a standalone, or put it in part of a warrant article, and that warrant article fails, the police department will not be able to use them at all, even if they were to take it from within their budgets.
and when the question was raised last week about why it was in the police budget, it's because it's a service, it's not a charitable donation. This is actually a service we receive and use.
I mean, so is the home health and hospice and other things that the town uses. Would we turn away?
Actually, the town's not using it, individuals in the town are using it. In this case,
So
the
how much
police are
was
using it.
requested? I mean, to me, if it's gonna be, I don't think it's, I'm still saying that I don't think it's appropriate.
I have a different take, I guess for a different reason. I believe it is a service. It's not a charity, this one. I believe the other ones are charities. Like Bill said, we, people in town use them. I don't believe I don't believe taxpayers should fund charities. I believe charities should be funded by individuals. So I believe this one is not a charity. This is a function of the town. So, you know, because I don't truly support taxpayer-funded charities, I have to take this out of that list because I don't believe this is a charity. I believe this one is more a necessity for the town, which is why I feel safer being in the budget, because they do use it and choose to use it, and they go to this company, this service to use when the cases arise.
But how do we know that at some point they don't say that the amount we choose to pay them is insufficient for them to return our calls next year, if we don't pay the full amount?
We have no control over that. That's the problem with all these services that have cropped up in the last 10, 15, 20 years.
So how do we get away with paying them less than what they asked for than we do, say, the oil bill? Should we not then, if we're going to say it's a town service, put the full amount?
Well, you know, at any point, any of our bills could go up unexpectedly, and we would just have to pay it and then budget appropriately the following year.
But we're not paying the full amount. They've requested more than $1,900. We're just choosing not to pay the full amount.
Mhm.
So what makes that different than the electric bill? Why do we get to choose to pay these?
Because you can't get away with it with the electric bill.
What was the full, what was the request then? Then perhaps it should be the full amount.
Good point.
It is a good point, but if they're willing to accept this, I guess they don't know, we don't know, they don't know, and we don't know how often we're gonna use them. I mean, the goal is, you don't wanna use them at all in a perfect world, but I'm guessing the point is, if the oil company came back to us and says, look, we'll take less money, we'll agree to pay less money. We won't say, no, we're gonna give you the full amount. So I guess from my point of view,
And do we
if
know
they're
that?
willing to accept this,
Do we know that?
well, yeah, right?
Oh, Bill?
Yeah, they'll take it, right, because they've been taking that, hasn't this been the same amount, Frank, about the past few years we've been paying them? Give or take a couple dollars, handful of dollars.
Right.
Okay, so I guess they, you know, I mean, I guess to your point, if the number here, right now it's saying 1,900, which was give or take a handful of dollars from previous years. If this number right now was $500, I would say, okay, maybe that might be a problem, but it's about what we've been giving them, even though it's less than what they've asked for, they've been accepting it.
Have we been using it more though?
I think they said they used it once or twice more this year. We don't know what it's gonna be next year, but
Well, if you look at the budget item, it's
Yep.
listed on there, it says it's doubled to serve 12 Litchfield children
Oh.
in 2000.
oh, you doubled, okay.
2000, and then last year, and that's doubled
So
from what it
then how
was
do we know
before.
that 1,900 isn't going to say, thanks for helping us, but we're not going to answer your calls because we lose 50 cents?
I guess we don't know that. We
And
don't.
I understand
If
your
you-
point is, it's getting stuck in our budget, and it's gonna be there, we've had it this year and next year, and then it's just gonna be a piece of the budget.
So I'll make a motion to amend the motion to put line item 349 to $2,500.
There is a motion to increase line 349, Child Advocacy Center, from $0 to $2,400.
25.
Excuse me, $2,500. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just to make you aware, that's the amount that they asked for.
Okay, then let me ask this question. I don't know who deals with this center? I guess it's the police chief.
Well, or a police officer,
Police
or
department,
some
yeah.
police department people.
What's the likelihood if we say, hey, we got $1,900 for you, they're gonna say, sorry, go, you know, you're done, we're not taking your calls anymore. Is that likely?
You're asking me to answer a question I
They
can't
ba-
answer, I don't know.
Yeah, and my understanding is, from reading is, they based it on the fact that they serviced 12 children last year. The selectmen, as in any line item, can say, you know what, we think we're going to use it a little bit less next year, so we're only going to budget $1,900. That's the way I look at it.
But this is the bill from previous year, right? So-
No, this is an estimate by that company based on 12 children that they serviced, what that cost is.
I'm happy with the number in the budget right now, and keeping it in the budget.
All right, the motion on the table right now is to make line 349 $2,500. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment, which is raising line 349 to $2,500, please signify by saying aye.
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 I'm
Any
going to go with
oppo-
aye, because for consistency's sake, aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, motion fails, 3-5. We are back to the main motion, which is make it 0. there any further discussion on line 349, making it zero, reduction of $1,900? If not, all those in
I
favor?
can call the question, right? I'll just, 'cause if it's gonna be a service, then I'm fine with where it is.
I'll vote on
I'll
it.
remove my motion. Can I do that?
Only if, who seconded it?
I have no idea.
We did. You and I did it both at the
Yes.
same time.
I gotta withdraw my second.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so now before I vote, what do we, how?
This,
You're voting to zero it out.
this
So if I
is,
say yes, I'm zeroing it out.
if you vote yes, you're zeroing it out. If you vote no, you're keeping it at $1,900.
Gotcha.
All right, so all those in favor of line 349, moving it to zero, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed?
No.
Aye.
Okay, so that passes.
Excuse me?
No, excuse me, that fails.
Then number remains.
So everything
1,
stays the same.
7, yes.
It was a good discussion.
It is, and I appreciate consistency too, so. Just remember that when I make a motion.
I'd like to have a, yes, just remember, I actually voted for an increase, so do that.
All right, so any further motions on the police budget?
I have one question. I didn't ask it last week. Maybe you can answer that, Frank. On the replacement of the rifle, the SOU rifle for $1,900.
Which line is that, right?
That would be 740 PD equipment purchase. We talked about the tasers, but no one asked about the rifle.
What would you like to know?
Just why does it need to be replaced? I mean, those kind of things last a very long time as
That's the SOU rifle, which is the
SWAT team.
SWAT team rifle. And it's basically been shot out. The barrel on it's had a lot of rounds down it. So it's relatively shot out. My understanding, one of the officers is serving as an armorer for the department. I think that's Officer Sergeant. And he says basically that it's no longer repairable, so.
All right, any further motions on police budget? All right, moving on to 4210.5, police support. Any motions on this account?
I have a question on 110. Are dispatchers also union?
Yes, they are.
So then, because we have one that receives a 5% raise, which is still in excess of the 2%, what would cause that?
I intend to get you all the answers to that, so
Okay.
I'll break it out. What I intend to do is ask for a breakout by officer,
Perfect.
and what I will do is show you how that sums up, if you understand what I mean.
I would appreciate that very much.
Not a problem.
That's all I have.
All right, nothing else on police support. All right, moving on then to mosquito district. Are there any motions on mosquito district?
This is the controversial one. This is the bat box conversation.
Where are we? Oh, mosquito.
I'm looking forward to seeing the bat box in town.
Any motions?
What number is that?
All right, hearing none, we are moving past mosquito to animal control. Any motions on animal control, 4414.10? All right, hearing nothing, moving to library for 4550.2.
Hang on a second on that. Information that was asked of last week was how much of the budget the library intends to expend, and the library got back to Jason and basically said that they intend to, excuse me, expend their full appropriation from the town.
All right, and we also, and I did forget that we did receive some additional information from the librarian about the oil usage, so I do need to make sure that gets recorded under correspondence.
I don't know if you sent that out.
I did.
Yeah, she did.
Yep,
we
I
got
did
it.
send it out. So there was a 10-year history of annual usage, 5-year and average usage, and the 2 oil tanks have a capacity of 275 gallons each, and they are both currently close to empty. Historically, there are deliveries made in February, March, October, and December, and there have been no deliveries yet this fall.
I'd like to move, we on the budget now?
Yep.
Move the library budget from $203,689 to $202,689.
Which is a reduction of $1,000.
Second?
That reflects the difference in oil costs that we talked about earlier when I did the minutes. Reflects the correct number for the cost per gallon.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of a $1,000 deduction, which leaves a bottom line number of $202,689, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any- Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-2. Any other motions on the library? Hearing none, we'll move to health agencies.
Yeah, I have a question, please. This is something last year, and I believe the year before, the selectmen chose to put it a warrant, right?
Correct.
Okay, I believe you had warrant discussions. Was this going toward a warrant, or you didn't discuss that yet?
We've discussed it, and it is going to be proposed to go forward as a warrant.
Okay.
But at the Budget Committee meeting last week, there was some discussion that people would prefer to see it back in the budget, so either way you do, it's fine. If you put it back in the budget, then we won't put it forward a warrant, and vice versa.
Well, yeah, because right now it is, let's see, yeah, it is not in the budget, which, right, so if you guys chose not to put it in a warrant, or if we chose to put it back in the budget, we would have to motion to add money.
Yep.
The way it
You'd have
stands
to
now.
add whatever you feel is appropriate, and
My,
we would, as a board, most likely not put it as a warrant.
now, my opinion, I think we just spoke about it, I kind of like this one as a warrant,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Any further discussion on health agencies? All right, we had deferred Parks and Recreation from the week before, so that is the next item.
4520.
Did we get the bid numbers yet?
Hang on a second, let me just get to the,
I gotta find it.
It's 4520.10.
the information I have is that they have opened the bids, but they have not accepted them as of yet, and they intend to do that at their next meeting.
Which is when?
I don't know, I asked that question myself,
Do you have it?
but I was at town hall today.
These are the bids for,
Mowing.
which is under part of field maintenance,
Field maintenance, yeah.
$650.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think they're the first and third Tuesday, aren't they?
Something like that.
I'm not
See,
sure, I'm not sure of the meeting
Ray's
schedule.
getting up right now. Right there we go, recreation, November 25th.
Yeah, so next week. Next week, Tuesday.
All right. What do we want to do then?
What they did is they opened the bids, and then they handed them out to the members, and they plan to get together on that meeting and select a vendor.
If it's okay with the board, I'd be okay with holding, and then we make that the number they choose.
All right, so we're going to hold Parks
Well,
and
that's only a
Rec.
piece of the number.
Well, right, but
I just want you to understand, it's just a piece of number.
Well, wait, is it, no, is it, it's the whole thing, the whole field maintenance, right?
I'm not sure I understand what
part.
your question that you're
No,
asking.
just the mowing. Repair sprinkler heads, seeding, fertilizing, mowing.
Because I guess the question I'm asking is, was the bid going out for the whole repair sprinkler head, seeding, fertilizing, and mowing, or just mowing?
I didn't see the bid. My understanding on the discussion was it was mowing, but I
We get a copy of that?
I thought it was.
I
the
don't
whole-
Yeah,
know.
it's not.
Oh, it's
I
not?
don't know.
I don't think so.
Table it for another week.
I do not know whether it's inclusive of all of that. I would think it is not, because in the past, they've had other people doing the
Okay.
sprinkler head repairs and all that stuff.
You want to hold it till December 2nd?
I'd like to get a copy
I think the
of it.
budget request is too high, but I'm willing to wait. If it,
You're going to be voting them again anyways.
It's,
I'd rather
Yeah.
wait.
yeah, it's up to the committee. You can make changes, any changes now that you want, and we can always like Frank said, we're going to revote the
Yeah.
bottom line anyways. No motions on Parks and Recs tonight? All right, that ends budget voting. Move then to member input, new business.
I had asked an agenda
Oh,
item be
I'm
added.
so sorry, yes. So, yeah, under member input, new business, we have, actually,
Solid
so
waste.
solid waste is still
Yeah.
under town, yeah. So
Let me pull it
solid
up
waste
here.
budget, you wanted to review that? And,
That's
4321?
4321, which we reviewed on 1023.
Yeah, I wasn't able to make that part of the meeting.
Wait a minute.
4321.
43. I'll get it eventually, okay. And so I missed the discussion. Where am I? On demolition solid waste disposal, where there was a note there that said would move to recycle via co-op, and I didn't know what that meant.
Okay, so Litchfield is a member of a co-op, and I forget the abbreviation for the co-op, but there's a group of towns that get together and they try and strike the best deals they can for getting rid of their waste, for recycling aluminum and all of that type of stuff. So what that note basically means is that instead of going through, for example, Wheelabrator, which has the big place up in the Concord area to handle all the waste, we're now going through the co-op to get the co-op price
Okay.
for the disposal.
Okay.
And they took the wood out of the stream somehow, so that it wasn't going in our demolition dumpsters.
And it gets treated, it gets handled at a
Yeah.
lesser rate.
So we're looking at a budget number for next year of $74,429. Okay.
And the co-op, you can see the changes in the individual rates from the,
Right.
down below there, underneath that total number, Bill.
So,
Okay, I'm not through yet.
Yeah, from what I remember, they sort of.
Now, we spent so far this year, 48,000. That was through the last report we got. I wonder if we could get another estimate of what is remaining for the year from Dave Mellon. He's usually pretty good at that.
No, Dave keeps great numbers.
Pardon?
I said Dave keeps great numbers.
Yeah.
What are you looking for, the rest of this year?
Yeah, what he thinks he's going to actually spend in that line item this year. And I have the same question under the 694 line, which also is running way behind what's in the budget, proposed in the budget next year.
Don't we have a huge spike though, right at Christmas time? What
There is a slight spike, but it's nowhere near what,
we got left?
but again, if Dave will just give us his guesstimate, that's fine.
I wouldn't expect this, Ray, per se. I would expect that's more on the cardboard and the, I'll call it the waste side, which is where you put the trash into the building,
Yeah.
not the construction material
Yeah.
section. So I just want to make sure I understand. So you're looking for, yeah, but I'm trying to make sure I get the right line.
693,
693,
which is the demo,
Yep.
and 694, which was the solid waste.
694 may be the one that you would see it go up in.
Little spike at Christmas time because of all the
Presents.
wrapping paper.
Yeah,
and
all the
stuff.
presents from the people's household, and
Oh, yeah.
So we're looking
And the
for the,
violence.
for the,
Yeah,
what the current rate
what I
is.
would tell you, Ray,
I will give
Ray,
you-
what I would tell you, in 2013, the spike was about $5,000.
Oh,
You're
so it's
gonna-
not much.
you're not going to see much for Christmas, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
simply because you'll see that in January.
January,
Yeah.
we already seen it.
But if Dave can just give us his guesstimate of what...
I will
the
ask
numbers are
Dave
gonna
to
be.
estimate what we anticipate spending for the rest of the year.
And then that'll give me a feel for what might be a better budget number than what's there.
Okay. All right, so that is all you have for solid waste that you wanted to?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so then under new business, you had asked about hearing dates?
Yeah, do we have dates for the deliberative sessions yet? Have they set them?
Board of Selectmen discussed that at the last meeting, and the Board of Selectmen asked Jason to contact the school to go through that. I haven't heard anything back as to
Okay.
what the dates are, or the date.
How about our hearing date, Madam Chair?
Our hearing dates, the potential hearing dates are between January 11th and January 20th. We have not picked a date yet.
I'm sorry, it was when?
Between January 13th and January 20th.
I have the 6th and the, oh, those are meetings, okay.
6th and the 8th are meetings. We can hold our hearing dates between January 13th and January 20th.
Right.
My recommendation would be, since we meet on Thursday nights, is that we hold them on the 15th, January 15th. But we have not set any dates yet.
Well, why don't we?
We can?
I think the 15th's a good date. Yeah.
Anybody else have any recommendations?
What are the drop dead dates? The 13th?
13th, between the 13th and the 20th.
Yeah, January 20th is the last date.
Yeah, and we kind of want to avoid the last
Yeah.
date.
So, yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we pick a main and an alternate in case we have weather that we can't see?
See, my only concern with the 15th, I'll be honest with you, is that you get a snowstorm on the 15th. That means you're going to have to go for the 20th, or the 9th, or somewhere in that area, because either that or try and do it on a Friday. I'm wondering if it would make better sense to go on the 13th, and then you have the 15th as your backup.
The only problem that I would have with that is that the 8th, which is the Thursday, is when we wrap up the school budget supposedly, and the town budget gets wrapped on the 6th, and if we're not able to do that, we're going to need the 13th
Tuesday.
to finalize the budget, and Madam Chair, get a presentation together.
I would say the 15th, and then as a backup, I would do the 19th.
Rain date the 19th.
That's a holiday, by the way, the 19th is Martin Luther King Day.
Is it?
You know, I can't recall when we've ever canceled a budget hearing for the five.
No, I can
for the
remember
five
plenty of
people that
snowstorms
show
that we
up.
actually met for the budget hearing, so being the town of Litchfield, we all are,
It's televised, so people can see it from their home, as long as we can get there.
yep.
The 15th, the date?
I would say the 15th is the date by consensus.
Yes.
All right, so our hearing is going to be on the 15th.
And that's gonna be here?
That's going to be here at the high school, yes, and I will notify. All right, anything else under member input and business?
Yes, now I have something on that.
Okay.
Only because I forgot to ask. How are we going to vote on the school budgets? I mean, are we doing a bottom line vote, or what are we, how are we going to vote on that?
My understanding is we're going to use the same process. We're going to go through, we're going to have a presentation. The next meeting, we're going to go through and make any motions to reduce or increase or change
Individual lines.
individual lines. And then the same thing, we will hold bottom line
Bottom line vote.
until our very last meeting.
So then the bottom line vote will be on the total budget, not an individual.
You know, it's up to the committee, but I would prefer a bottom line.
That will really be interesting.
Because well, Well, at that point, we should have gone through and had our discussions and rationalized any changes we made. So I would think if you're going to make a bottom line that's different from what the vote of the committee has been up to that point, you would have some specific places that you wanted to either make further increases to,
I agree
or
with
rationale for why you were making a different bottom
I
line.
agree with you. Okay.
Anything else? All right, moving on to our final public input. Is there any public input? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Everybody have a great holiday next week, and we will be back on December 2nd. We are adjourned.